Welcome to Celtics Rundown. That's right. We have a new name over here at 5 Reasons Sports. So, not the debut for the series, but the debut under this new branding, Celtics Rundown. And I appreciate everyone for sticking with us here. Unfortunately, we had to go on a 2-week hiatus due to me losing my voice and being sick. So, to everyone who was reaching out, Celtics Digest, on and on, I appreciate y'all. Here we are, though. We're back. So, let's put those 2 weeks behind us. We've got Khari Thompson here from Boston.com, Celtics beat writer. I'm assuming most of you on this live stream are familiar with his exceptional work. And Khari, we have been blessed because right before we kick off this live stream, Celtics make a move, sending Jaden Springer to the Rockets with heavily protected picks involved from both sides.
Yeah, I mean, looks like a salary dump to me, right, Bobby? Just getting rid of some of that money, dealing with the luxury tax situation. So, yeah, it was not necessarily a surprise, but still, anytime a deal goes down, you think about it.
Oh yeah, and this is clearly financially motivated by the Celtics. When you factor in what they're spending on the roster plus the luxury tax penalties with this more punitive collective bargaining agreement and the repeater tax on top of all that, as that starts to get very real for the Celtics and any other team it applies to, I mean, you can understand that they want to trim some payroll right now. There's also the impending ownership sale that is soon to begin with the first part of that transaction. So this is an understandable move from the Celtics, parting ways with Springer, who Ime Udoka, I tweeted this out, Khari, he's going to love this guy, a defensive bulldog who just brings you that tenacity. I've always said that he plays basketball like a football player. So that is right up Ime's alley. But at the same time, for the Celtics, he was in the stay ready group. And even though he was the catalyst in that road win against the Clippers, he doesn't play frequently. So you can understand them wanting to move his $4 million salary.
I love your point about him playing like a football player because I'm sure you saw Chris Forsberg asked all the Celtics
I
which
did.
player would be the best football player, and Jaden Springer got the most votes, which was interesting. But I mean, I've always liked Springer's athleticism since he was at Tennessee. He also had some moments getting streaky with his three-point shot when he got some rotation minutes for the Celtics, which would be interesting. Young player, former G League Finals MVP. So a lot of potential there. And you're right. I think Ime is really going to like coaching him.
Yeah, I think he's going to love him. He's a restricted free agent. I would hardly be surprised if he's back with the Rockets. But for the Celtics, clearly this signals that they were going to move on from him as much as they liked him, that just given the financial constraints, they probably were not going to re-sign him even as an RFA.
Yeah, yeah. And they their money is tied up, man. They're gonna have some hard financial decisions over the next couple of years for sure. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. The real money hasn't been played with yet.
Without a doubt. And we'll get to the Celtics. We'll circle back to the trade conversation and what they might do at the end of the show. But there are still options for them. We'll dive into that in a minute. But first, big road win for the Celtics against the top seed in the East last night in Cleveland, 112-105, the final score. What were your thoughts on that matchup? What are your takeaways from the win?
I mean, it's a good win. Anytime you can beat top team in the East and reassert who you are, that's a big thing. It was really encouraging to see Derek White sort of break out of his slump and especially get some clutch fourth quarter buckets. I thought Donovan Mitchell had one of the best dunks of the year for Porzingis. That was insane. And yeah, I just think overall, solid win for the Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, Mitchell getting KP right there was pretty impressive. And Porzingis tried to get his get back with the poster dunk later, and
Yeah.
it didn't go his way. Overall, though, Porzingis, he had an excellent first half defensively, and then but he was only 2 for 9 with 4 points. And then in the second half, he puts 15 on the board and had way more of a two-way impact after halftime.
Yeah, that's going to happen too. You're going to have some streakiness when you shoot as many threes as the Celtics do. And when you shoot them as deep as Porzingis does, like he gets serious range on those threes. So, that's part of the game plan. Spread them out, get to the rack. And he did it. He actually had a nice drive or two during that game too. So, he's been playing really well lately.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's been huge as they start to reestablish continuity with that starting five as they get more minutes together. We'll put a pause in Cavs talk just for a second. We won't do this all the time, but Damian Guzman asked us, Khari, do you think that we, as in the Miami Heat, we'll get Kevin Durant for Jimmy Butler because we called about him. Never say no. I don't quite understand why the Suns are seemingly so willing to trade Kevin Durant. And if the primary return is Jimmy Butler, I definitely wouldn't do it. So I don't think so. I lean more towards either Kevin Durant goes to Golden State or the Suns come to their senses and don't move him. But what's your outlook on this?
Yeah, I'm with you, Bobby. I don't really get the KD to Miami thing. I mean, if I'm Phoenix, I want more in return, and if I'm KD, like not that it matters what he wants, but I want to be on a contender, and so and Miami doesn't really fit that mold. I don't think he fits Miami's timeline. Like it's a weird deal on a lot of fronts for me.
Yeah, KD ain't got time to waste. So I know that it was Phoenix and Miami were on his list when he first ended up leaving Brooklyn, but I just don't see it right now. And the Mavs are involved. We'll talk about them and that prospect later on in the live stream. But the guy you brought up earlier, Khari, you nailed it. He is the bellwether, Derek White. And in the fourth quarter, he absolutely erupted. Like you said, ton of clutch buckets there. 14 points. He was the only player on either side to reach double figures in the final frame. 5 of 6 from the field, 4 of 5 from 3. He was serving it up however Cleveland wanted it, whether it was deep off the catch, being able to space the floor a la Peyton Pritchard, where he's way beyond the three-point line. He was giving them up fakes and nailed it off the dribble, comes off a screen and buries some. So Derek White, it really is that the Celtics go as he does.
Yeah, listen, Joe said it last after the game that like they're a completely different team when he plays like that. And that's just been part of the narrative around the Celtics for a long time. I mean, I remember we were out in Cleveland for the playoffs last year, and Jalen said that Drew and Derek are the team's X factors. Like it's just what it is. So that's why I wasn't super worried about the Celtics when they were going through their slump, because like Derek was slumping pretty hard. And remember, he was really great to start the beginning of the season. Like he was on a tear. And so I figured like once he picked it back up, that was a pretty big piece of what was wrong with the Celtics. Obviously, there were some effort issues too, being able to summon the right kind of energy from night to night. But he's such a big part of what they do on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, without a doubt. And when they were on fire to start the season, like you said, so was he. He was shooting over 40% from 3 at that time. Then it plummets to around 32%, and they're still above 500, but 14-10 is not what you expect from, in my opinion, still the most talented roster in the NBA. And now he's shooting better, and that record, there's a wider gap between the wins and the losses and what's in each column. So the Celtics, they go as Derek does. And then that other point, Kristaps Porzingis brought it up last night, acknowledging that, we tend to get up for the big games like this one against the Cavs, but it's hard every night coming off a championship, and every team is throwing their best punch at you. And sometimes, let's be realistic. Obviously, I'm putting my spin on this here, but he did basically acknowledge that if it's a Wednesday in January against a sub 500 team, they might be geeked up to play the Celtics. The Celtics don't feel the same way.
Yeah, and we've seen that. I mean, like, the Pelicans game is the top example that comes to mind, in my opinion. That's just how it is with this group. Some nights they have it, some nights they don't. And it kind of feels to me like they are ready for the playoffs to start. Like, that's really what they want, man. They want basketball to matter, and they have the unfortunate tendency of sleepwalking through some of these games. And it really hurts because sometimes they're just talented enough to just shoot their way out of it, and they just win a fair amount of games just off rip because of that. But if they don't, you're right, they can get caught by some of these mediocre teams and some of these bad losses, man. I mean, like, remember they lost to Orlando without Paolo and Wagner, losing to the Hawks, like
There's been a bunch of them.
they've got a bunch of bad losses on this resume.
Yeah,
but
like
they
the
still
one
have the
in
best road
Toronto.
record in the NBA.
They do, and first team to 20 wins on the road this season, excuse me. So they've certainly gotten it up, away from TD Garden. We'll see about defending the fortress moving forward, especially when it matters most come the playoffs, because like you said, they've been ready for the postseason. I think they've been ready since training camp, since they won a title, all of that. And so with a veteran team, with the pedigree that this group individually and collectively has, I'm not too worried about the Celtics in the long term here. Also, something that bodes well for them come playoff time, Jason Tatum's facilitating. I think it really stood out yesterday, but it's far from the first example. Otherwise, I wouldn't be saying it like this. I think he's reached a point, Khari, and even leveled up from a season ago, where he gets the Celtics a good shot virtually every time down the floor. He had 7 assists last night, however many hockey assists on top of that, and teams are pressuring him, and he just handles it with such poise and consistently makes the right read and gets the Celtics a good look.
Yeah, for the most part I agree in that Tatum's playmaking is spectacular, and he's just a complete player. Now, your point about them consistently always getting the Celtics good shots, no, I disagree, because like one of my main gripes with this team is that they don't get a lot of easy buckets. Like, this is a team that doesn't really get to the line. This is a team that doesn't really drive the ball that much. Like, this is a team that also is at the bottom of the league in terms of fast break points and points in the paint. So the things that are really truly easy that you can count on for consistently, this team doesn't get a lot of that. They get a lot of threes. They get a lot of, step back mid ranges, and they make them because they're talented. But yeah, Tatum's reading the game pretty well, but as a whole, the Celtics make things pretty hard on themselves offensively, I would say.
Sure, but I actually think those 2 points, believe it or not, can coexist because the Celtics are geared towards such a 3-point heavy approach, and teams, especially this season, we've seen it more dramatically than ever. They look at the math and say, as much as we don't want to give up points in the paint, especially not at the rim, if it means that we're protecting the perimeter more effectively, then so be it. That's the cost of doing business in the modern NBA. And so also I look at it and say, could Tatum drive more? I think he's a pretty forceful player and does his job when it comes to getting to the free throw line. But could he raise some of those numbers where you said they're at the bottom of the league? Absolutely. At the same time, a lot of it is he's getting players either open looks from 3, and then for a large chunk of the season, the Celtics have surprisingly not been shooting well for as many quality opportunities as they and primarily him are creating. And the second part of it is that if he gets blitzed and hits someone on the short roll, what happens after that is out of his hands.
Right. I mean, they're the boomer bust Celtics, and that's the thing about like counting potential assists, right? Because like assists are entirely dependent on whether or not guys make the shots. And like you were saying, Celtics had a long stretch this year where guys just weren't making shots, and they've just been so streaky. Like, how many games have we had to sit through when they were like 8 for 37 or something crazy from 3? And it's just like, it's it's hard because, like, as a big man, I be wanting them to diversify the offense. Like, I love the paint game. I love dunks. You know what I'm saying? I love attacking the rim, and that's just me selfishly. Obviously, their strategy works. Like, they've got the 3rd best record in the NBA, but still, man, like, I personally am like, what are you doing a lot of the time, guys? Are these really the best possible looks that we can get, or are they forcing it?
Yeah, this is a head coach and a front office that are dialed into the analytics. And while that makes for a smart, efficient brand of basketball, it's not always the most entertaining. It's not always the most diverse. And if shots aren't going well, then they can be a tough watch. And especially if you're a Celtics fan and they're not shooting well, and there's been a regression this season compared to last in terms of how it affects them at the other end of the floor and how they handle that and weather it. Although I thought last night was a great example of, okay, we're not shooting well, but we're still locked in defensively. There were a number of other key ingredients to that win, but defense was the driving force in that win. They held the Cavs to their lowest field goal percentage of the season, and that right there speaks volumes.
Yeah, I mean, they got up for this game. You wish that they would bring this effort consistently, but the reality is they don't. So it was refreshing. And you could see early on just the way that they were hounding, hounding Garland and Mitchell, and also just like the fact that both teams started off horrendous from the field. Like, you could tell the Celtics were up for this one. They really wanted this one, and it's a huge win for them because Cleveland's been on a tear.
I mean, more than halfway through the first quarter, it was 7-6.
Yeah.
Like, what is that?
Gross basketball.
Gross basketball. That's not even like 1990s. That's peach basket era basketball right there. And the driving force for the Celtics early on offensively was Jaylen Brown. I mean, he largely carried their offense to start the game. And what I love, and I would imagine you do too, Khari, is that he was aggressive and he was attacking the basket. And I think one of the key ingredients for the Celtics is that Jaylen Brown kind of fits out and gives them a piece that they don't always have, whether it's attacking the basket, whether it's him being a mid-range maestro, which we saw more last season, but I think recently he's starting to get back to. And especially when it comes to Jaylen Brown pushing the pace, where a lot of times, again, more last season than this one, but he'll say, I got the ball here in the backcourt and I'm going and I don't care who's coming with me. And he's one of the best finishers at the rim in transition.
Yeah, Jalen can be a bull in the china shop when he wants to. And I just love that about his game because it really sets the tone. Because, for the longest time until last year, the Celtics had toughness questions. We questioned whether or not they were really tough enough. And so, Jalen not only got ripped, but he just adopted that mentality that I am going to take the ball to the hole. I am going to try to guard the other team's best player when you can. And that's what you want for the superstar. That's a $300 million mentality right there. Now, does he need to cut down on the 5 turnovers that he had last night? Yes. But I mean, overall, you got to respect it.
Without a doubt. And then the other player I want to get to before we look ahead to Celtics Mavs and some more trade deadline talk, Al Horford last night. I mean, that might have been his best game of the season. 13
the Cleveland
points,
killer.
10 rebound. Cavs killer, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And I mean, shout out to Noah Dalzell, who was there. She tweeted that a Cav fan was yelling at Al Horford to retire. I mean, clearly that one backfired. And so that the 10 rebounds, Khari, are a season high for Horford. Plus he had the block. I mean, he was, especially in the first half, he was outstanding. Again, this was easily one of his best games.
Yeah, definitely. And again, kind of reminds you of when he sent the Cavs packing last year in the playoffs, literally closed them out on his own, just had an Al Horford game. I mean, he's liable to do that from time to time. Obviously at 38, it's not going to happen every night, but yeah, I mean, you have Al who's capable of such performances, and they're going to need to really keep him fresh going down the road because, those types of games are going to be really important. And also it's why you're looking for Porzingis to really stay healthy because Al had to play a ton of minutes in the playoffs last year and it kind of hampered his ability to do that. So hopefully a fresher Al Horford will be key this time around.
I tell you, I found it funny because last year after they eliminated the Pacers, it was me, it might have been you as well. There was a slew of us on the beat who were basically asking Al Horford, how are you doing this at this age where Porzingis goes down, your workload ramps up at the most intense time of year, and you're playing better? You're not just handling this, but you're kind of thriving right now. So there's a lot of question about Al's age and durability as he was continuing to just elevate his game when the Celtics needed him most.
Yeah, I mean, you got to respect the guy for completely reinventing his game. I think if you saw the 2006 version of Al Horford, there's no way you would have guessed that this is what he would have become. And that's just the willingness and humility to adapt to the three-point revolution, to keep himself in incredible shape, and to just go in there night in, night out as a competitor and just keep working at it, keep chipping away. So major props to Al for the player he's became because it's been quite an adjustment over the years.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think the only possible clue into, hey, this guy might adapt with where the game is going is that he's a flat out winner. 2-time national champion at college. Hawks consistently in the playoffs with him as their best player. Some would say Joe Johnson, but when you look at winning and what Brooklyn did with Joe and what Al has done everywhere he's gone, I mean, I think you can make a strong case for Horford in that argument. And I mean, this is a guy who the other part of it that he said after they won the championship last year, Khari, is that he described his workout regimen as a lifestyle. And that's why you continue to see him playing at the level he is and why I would think it's foolish to dismiss the notion that this guy could be playing at 40 years old.
Yeah, I mean, Al seemed adamant that he was definitely coming back this year. And so it's I don't know, if you win again this year and you have an opportunity at 3 rings in a row, how many people get the opportunity to get a three-peat? Obviously we're getting ahead of ourselves with this conversation, but I'm just saying for someone like him who's put so much into it, who has had such a lengthy career and a good career, 3 rings is quite a resume booster, dude. That'll be a little boost for the Hall of Fame debate for sure.
Yeah, that would definitely strengthen his case right there. And so, really, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, as long as he's healthy. So let's take the obvious caveats out of it. But to me, it's kind of like one of the driving forces in whether Al is back or not next year. To me, is the ownership sale, and if it's a group that says, "Hey, this is expensive enough that we don't feel like we can re-sign you, Al," then I could see him retiring. But as far as you look at the condition and the fitness and how he's playing right now, I would predict that he's back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any reason to be like hang him up, Al. So for sure. And your piece about the ownership is interesting because, like, if you look at the Luka Doncic trade, like, I don't think that's something Mark Cuban would have done. Like,
Clearly
period,
not.
point blank, period. But like, new ownership sees things differently. And yeah,
He was
blockbuster.
yeah, Mark Cuban was left in the dark on that trade. We're going to get to it, so that's a perfect segue. Real quick, for Celtics Digest shout out. We talked about the trade at the start of the live stream. No worries that you weren't here for it. Totally understand. And so the way we look at it, I think you can read the tea leaves and understand that this was financially motivated, that even with Springer being a restricted free agent, which means you have a great chance to bring him back, that given the exorbitant nature of the payroll, they probably weren't going to with the repeater tax and everything. So I think you can look at the layout of the situation where the Celtics are financially and understand that them not getting a player back for Jaden Springer, and instead it's just heavily protected picks involved from both sides. That speaks volumes to why the Celtics made this move. And Ime, he's going to love Jaden Springer, who plays basketball like it's football and is a rugged on-ball defender. As far as Khari, you set it up. The Luka Doncic trade, I'll just throw the lob and get out of the way. Your overall reaction to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking, obviously. I think that's everyone's reaction. I don't think anybody saw this coming, even the insiders, which they usually know a little something, something. But even them, they were like, Shams, did you get hacked? Like, that's just what it
NBA
was.
executives thought that.
Yeah.
That speaks volumes.
Yeah. And so it's like, it's shocking. It seemed like a real buddy deal, just with the relationship between Nico Harrison and Rob Pelinka that goes way back to, their days working with Kobe. And it seems to me like Dallas is like, we've seen Luca up close and personal more than anybody, and we've seen his work ethic, and we're just not a believer that he's going to put the work in on the defensive end of the floor and with his conditioning to become the type of player that the Lakers think he's going to be. That's the only reason why you make this deal. Like, they just got fed up and they're like, we're done. I don't know if something happened behind the scenes that we don't know about, but like, just purely from a basketball stance, like, you've got one of the best scorers in the NBA, five-time first team All NBA guy, just a prodigious talent and a clutch guy, someone who makes clutch shots and puts butts in seats. You don't move a guy like that if you really believe in him under any circumstances. Certainly not for Anthony Davis that's on the wrong side of 30 and a first round pick and a role player. So like, yeah, that's not the type of move that you can make unless you know something that we don't know. And it's fascinating because this move could easily blow up in their face.
Easily. I mean, it's so fragile. I understand that Anthony Davis played 76 games last year. He's not known for his durability. And for a lot of Kyrie's career, even in college, he got hurt. Neither is he. Now, he's had this career renaissance in recent years, so shout out to him. But at the same time, these are two dudes in their 30s with just a concerning injury past. And so it's a fragile window. And for all the concerns that you can throw out about Luka, including, by the way, multiple calf strains in recent years, that could potentially lead to an Achilles injury. So you can understand it. But we're also talking about a dude who is a five-time first-team All-NBA player by 25 that took you to the finals last year. Right. So from an individual and a team perspective, it has worked to a very large degree. And so to me, I mean, the process of this and not opening it up to get a better offer was horrific. I don't think if Nico Harrison doesn't love Anthony Davis the way he does, that this is the return and Doncic is a Laker. And even if you try to justify the process and say, well, if it shops to other teams, it gets out, and then there's the backlash from the fans, and maybe Luka steers himself somewhere else. Luka, it was no secret. If he were to leave Dallas, the primary landing spots from his perspective were Los Angeles and Miami. So I don't think that holds water. And more than anything, process versus results. They didn't get nearly enough. And now there's reports, Khari, that, hey, maybe the Mavericks' master plan is get Anthony Davis and Kevin Durant, pair them with Kyrie Irving. It was something that Kyrie even got asked about last night after the Mavs game against Philly. Well, that's all well and good, but you know what would have helped, Khari? More draft capital in return for your franchise star.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Luka is definitely worth more than one first-round pick, especially when you consider that Mikal Bridges went for 5 in this past offseason. Like, you can't tell me that you couldn't have gotten more for Luka. I mean, it's just, again, like I said, combination of a lack of faith, being fed up with the guy. There's clearly something, that seems personal going on between Luka and that Dallas front office, and then just having the ability to call up your boy and be like, look, can we get this done before anyone finds out? Like, perfect storm.
Yeah, I don't know how that wasn't a signal to Nico Harrison when the other guy, you have the most valuable, I hate to use the term asset about a person, but you have the most valuable asset in the deal. And the other person is telling you, hey, just keep this between us. We don't want this getting out. I mean, he knows why. That was a horrendous example of general managing by Nico Harrison. We'll see if he kind of salvages this with Kevin Durant. We'll see how far the Mavericks go, but it's a very fragile window. And again, they went to the finals last year, so I don't even love the notion that, hey, they upgraded in the short term. We will also see, Khari, if Anthony Davis, he suffered an abdominal strain last week against the Sixers, if he plays in what is now a dramatically different looking NBA Finals rematch on Thursday at TD Garden.
Yeah, looking forward to that one. Whether he plays or not, just because of the drama and the storylines, and anytime you get Kyrie back in TD Garden, it's always fun, man. Like, I just did a whole podcast with my little brother, just about Celtics fans and Kyrie and unpacking the history.
Plug the pod.
Oh yeah, well it's just we don't even have a name for it at this point. It's literally Khari and Makai's Celtics pod. But yeah, it's on my YouTube channel. But yeah, it's kind of like, what the Hauser brothers are doing, in that it's an excuse to see my brother and hang out with him and talk ball. But yeah, our latest episode is about Kyrie and just whether or not Celtics fans are unhinged for the way they hate him.
It's been a long time, and a lot of people have not let go of that hatred. We'll see, though, maybe winning a finals at his expense and the way that they clamped him, maybe that changes things. But we know Celtics fans. I wouldn't be surprised if a healthy percentage of the crowd don't feel that way. But I guess we'll find out on Thursday, and that's part of the dramatics of, again, a significantly altered NBA Finals rematch. Khari, we'll wrap with circling back to trade deadline talk from a Boston perspective. You can keep this as general as you want, as in whether you think the Celtics should be looking to upgrade their extended rotation. You can name specific targets, or you can point me to a position they should try to address. But Khari, what do you want to see Boston do between now and Thursday's deadline?
I mean, you need bench scoring. That's the big thing. You're 26th in the league in bench scoring. And I guess you could argue that you need another big for insurance in case KP or Al gets hurt. But I mean, to me, the main priority is bench scoring. And I think you'd like to see another athletic wing, because like when they play these bench lineups, like, Pritchard's quick. He brings the energy. He gets up and down the floor. But like, you're talking Al, you're talking Sam Hauser. Like, I would like to see an athletic 3-and-D wing that can score. I don't know if you can get one of those cheap enough to be within the Celtics wheelhouse. So I'm guessing that they're probably going to stand pat now that Springer's out of the way. But we'll see.
So like we talked about at the start, Derek White is the bellwether for this team, but also someone who has a significant impact is Sam Hauser. And with the lower back pain that it flares up on him at times, I mean, you can see what a hit it is, especially to their three-point shooting and the ability of the second unit to provide some offensive firepower. So that's a concern there, that he's played well of late, but you don't know, is it going to flare up on him at the worst possible time? Just like you didn't know last year. Can we trust Horford because of age and Porzingis because of durability to be there in the postseason? And for the most part, you lost the latter. So I look at big wing as a real need for the Celtics. And I understand it can get dicey behind Luke Kornet up front, but just given what's gone on with Xavier Tillman this season, I wouldn't be surprised if, I mean, there's reports from Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype that they've checked in with the Sixers about Gershon Yabusele, an old friend of theirs who they drafted. And I think the Sixers ultimately want to keep him and re-sign him over the summer, but he's obviously far from untouchable. So maybe Boston can get a deal done there. Another name to keep an eye on, in my estimation, is Torrey Craig, who got bought out by the Bulls, who the Celtics can afford. And when it comes to restrictions under this collective bargaining agreement, you don't have to worry about any of them. You can sign him. You're eligible to do so. The key there is that he's only appeared in 9 games this season. He hasn't played since December, and he's dealt with injuries that have cost him most of the last 2 years. But when he's right, he's an effective three-point shooter. He's a big, physical, versatile defender, and he'll contribute on the glass.
Yeah, those are 2 interesting names. And Yabusele is on the vet minimum. So, I mean, that also helps with the Celtics tax situation. So, he'd be interesting for sure. And it's just a cool story. Like, the guy hasn't played in the NBA for like 5 years. Like, he's having a career renaissance. And like, how cool would it be to have that continue in Boston? As far as Torrey Craig, man, I don't know if the Celtics need anyone else that's injury prone. Like, that's kind of the knock on them. Not only being inconsistent with the effort at times, but just like, how many times have we seen this group actually be together and play healthy? Like, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I think you want, I think you want someone younger, athletic, with more of a scoring punch. I actually liked what Springer brought to the team, but he's gone now.
I did too. Yeah, now that ship has sailed, and that changes some of their options. Clearly, they weren't, but you wonder about a name like Julian Champagny, if they could pry him from the Spurs, but he's under contract for $3 million, so that's too much for a Tillman trade. So they can't aggregate salaries. That one has presumably sailed. I can't see a realistic deal where they give up what it would take financially to acquire him. And so then you look at old friend Javonte Green. He fits a lot of what you were just talking about. He's shooting the ball well from 3. He's athletic. He can defend up way above his height, which is like 6'4". So to me, it's a guy with Celtics ties in a lot of ways that I could see them being interested in him. And New Orleans, I think, is looking to move players.
I'll give you one name that people aren't talking about anymore, but like,
let's hear it.
O'Shea Brissett was such a perfect fit for that last year. Like,
my guy.
Like, I don't know. Bring back O'Shea. Can I start to bring back Brissy TV movement?
Yes, I will stamp that. I'll retweet it if you put it out on social. Bring back Brissy TV. I would love it. I mean, he fits both what we were talking about there: big wing, athleticism, durability, all that. So the shooting, I love you, O'Shea, but it's not always there. But look, he was a huge part of that Game 2 win against the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals, where he allowed them a more athletic, versatile, smaller lineup that went on like a 20-0 run in the first half, and I think a 7-0 burst late in the third quarter that helped put the game away. They go up by 13 entering the final frame. So bring back Brissy TV. I'm all for it, Khari. He is Khari Thompson from Boston.com. If you got anything like the pod, any work, whatever you want to plug, your social handles, this is the time. Floor is yours.
Oh, man, just you can catch all my stuff on Boston.com and BostonGlobe.com. My YouTube channel is my name, Khari Thompson, KhariThompson. And yeah, catch me on Blue Sky and Twitter, which
Support
I rarely use.
Khari Thompson. Support great work. Thank you to Khari from Boston.com for joining us here today on the rebranded Celtics Rundown. Thank you for everyone who tuned in. Appreciate y'all, and we will see you next week.